Ayan na. Kamusta mga kayo dyan, mga kameta? Good evening to everyone. Sigurado ako na puyat kayong lahat. Hindi dahil naghihirap para sa mga analysis ng ating politika. Hindi dahil sa chine-check yung mga latest developments sa South Korea. Pero dahil sa nangyayaring marites ng bayan. At i-connect natin lahat yan because we're gonna talk about shortly etong third impeachment case na sasampahan most likely laban kay Vice President Sara Duterte and how that could set the tone for at least the Congress getting through etong impeachment complaints, perhaps not by the end of this year, but sometimes perhaps before the beginning of elections, no, or sometimes siguro January, kaya pa yan. So pag-usapan natin yan, but before going there, guys, I want to go back to this fundamental issues na itong mga fundamental issue na parati ko binabalikan, no. Um, Alam niyo, ang napansin ko, mga pinaka-busy dito sa issue ni Maris ba yan? Maris, right? I wanna get... Baka naman magkakamali naman tayo sa mga pangalan, di ba? Yung napanood niyo yung Safe House, sabi ko, lahat Kidball Montebello, sabi ko, si Kitatad. Tapos nagtinginan, bakit si Kitatad? You know, Kit versus Kit, yan. Bago tayo mag-Tito Boy Soto, Maris, right? Hi po. No, I mean, let me tell a couple of things and then i-connect ko yan sa politics. Don't worry about it, guys. Unang-una, sa aking palagay, aside from quote-unquote SUL whatever, shaming, sa aking palagay, there's a huge element of misogyny talaga nangyari because even if for a moment, hindi natin alam yung side ni Maris, the fact of the matter is, it's not like walang choice yung lalaki, diba? It's not like yung lalaki yung kawawa or something like that. So I think sometimes we have a tendency talaga na fino-focus natin masyado dun sa mga kababaihan pagdating sa mga ganitong issue. In fact, I think men should be held accountable for that. In fact, one of the things that always annoys me is when I hear some people say, mga lalaki, madali lang makakita mga lalaki, ganyan. That I find that very insulting because, excuse me, there are many men with great taste, you know, tsaka mga lalaki na mas maarte pa. Sa mga babae. So, and first of all, let's not talk as if mga lalaki walang self-restraint, mga lalaki walang taste, ang mga lalaki walang judiciousness. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Not true. Not true. Not true. Fake news. Fake news. So, una-una dyan, naiirita ako. Pangalawa, kung tinignan natin itong press con bang tawag dyan, clarificatory statement ni itong tao na to, mukhang talaga may kasalanan yung lalaki in a sense na siya yung nag-mislead, 'di ba? Siya yung nag-mislead. So, in that sense, I think sobrang unfair nangyari kasi parang lahat ng halos memes na lumalabas. And you know, I don't know why because wala namang pake sa issue na yan, but practically everything, I'm not even in the Philippines now, and everything on my feed is all about that, and then 90% is purong misogyny statements, misogynistic ganun. So unang-una, let me just say, I think there's a lot of unfairness in terms of over-focus on one side of this equation. And itong implied or implicit na assumption na kung may nangyari, yung lalaki ang inakit or something like that. So I just said, I'm sorry. Or well, ibang usapan na yung mga chipang na tao, but yun lang. The other thing is, well, I mean, if you talk to PR experts, they will say mukhang some of the boxes were ticked, ganon. Some would say parang masyadong scripted. I don't wanna go into that. Basta para sa akin, obviously under tremendous amount of pressure itong taong to. Batang-bata pa siya. So I felt that was her way of just ending the discussion because it was very, very, I mean, it was too much for her, no? Beyond the pale na yung mga attack sa kanya. Kasi guys, I want to tell you this, hindi naman tayo celebrity or whatever, right? Hindi naman natin kailangan. No, but what I'm saying is this. you have no idea how stressful it is pag sabay-sabay ka inattack ng maraming tao. Because that activates in your brain yung part ng ating evolutionary biology which is extremely scared of being ostracized. Kung alam nyo, sa mga unang panahon, if you were ostracized, you're dead, right? You're essentially meat to lions and crocodiles, right? So actually, human nature, our brains have evolved. This is evolutionary biology. You can study it yourself. Now, we are very, very concerned about stigmatization, right? And ostracization, right? So kung na-ostracize ka, that sets off an alarm bell in your brain, right? Dun sa neural pathways mo, it sets up an alarm bell na nabubulo na ako, sorry. It was a long day. Alarm bell na your existence is in danger. So yung survival instinct mo ay lalabas. And believe me or not, this happens to anyone. No matter how kapal moks you are, right? Pag parang nag-gang attack ka ng maraming tao na sabay-sabay, it is really something. Now, as I said, unfortunately, we experienced that many times nung panahon ni Digong. And also more recently, nakita ko may mga patay gutom na bayaran na vloggers dyan kung ano nung sinasabi. At yan, finally, yung NBI po ay nag-warning, by the way, na yung mga iba dyan, mga vloggers na ginawang hanap buhay ang destabilization, ginawang hanap buhay ang mag fake news at disinformation, pwede silang yariin, especially if this undermines national security. Yan, magpasalamat na yung mga DDS dyan sa yung anti-terror law na pinasa ni Tatay Digong yan kasi atat kayo nun. Ayan tuloy. Yayarin ka ngayon. Alam natin may mga iba dyan, medyo maraming amo, medyo binabayaran ng ano mo na, diba? Madali naman ko connect the dots. Going back to this, guys, sobrang mahirap yun pag inattack ka ng maraming tao na sabay-sabay. And I'll tell you what, back in the day, I had some contacts who were kind of like double agent style na kasama sa ibang kampo, but at the same time parang medyo hindi naman napamahal sa atin, pero medyo nakiki-bro sa atin, tapos text sa akin, uy bro, or ganito, titirahin ka na in 1 hour, di ba? Ano mo na, di ba? So, dapat alam mo na, i-turn off mo na yung page mo. So, there were times na i-off ko talaga yung totally lahat ng pages ko kasi ano talaga yan, guys, yung time na yun, especially even now, at the call center operation talaga yan. At kitang-kita natin, I mean, if you look at it, the network, mag-network analysis ka, sabay talaga ma-attack yung mga trolls. And I'm talking about, hindi lang yung mga troll na low-life na lock account. I'm talking about the ones with hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, right? Sabay-sabay ka nila atakin. So it is extremely stressful. Kahit gano'ng kakapal ang mukha mo or tapang mo, it's extremely stressful. So that's something that you have to keep in mind, right? And then, obviously, kung hindi ka sanay, katulad natin na itong mga walang hiyang, nagtutroll sa atin ng mga walang hiyang yan, you'll get hurt, right? Or, so, especially, ito rin, speaking of evolutionary biology, no? I'm just telling you how I process things, diba? Speaking of evolutionary biology, a certain personality types also get attracted to certain fields. And usually, yung mga na-attract sa mga show business, among other things, ito yung mga tao na parang a part of them finds a sense of, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be judgmental. Of course, some people are extremely talented, and just because they're talented, they end up in a certain field. Pero there are also a lot of people who get into certain fields because dun nila nakakuha yung sense of affirmation. And particular sense of affirmation from fans and supporters, right? From fans and supporters. So, pag sanay ka na kasi sa showbiz, ang labanan talaga, na-feeling ako no, pero sa pagkaalam natin, sa showbiz, ang labanan talaga dyan is, sino mas maraming fans, sino mas maraming followers, sino makapag, ng mas malaking fans club. So, when people, people in that world, sanay na yung neural pathways nila tsaka yung brain nila sa constant affirmation, right? Constant praise. Ang ganda mo, ang gwapo mo, ang galing mo, ganyan. Tapos, nakita ka lang sa TV parang kung sino ka na, diba? But anyway, nasasanay ka na yan. And then suddenly, what you're getting is all this bashing and hate message and all. ang hirap i-process yan. Sobrang hirap i-process yan. Right? In my own little capacity, when I transitioned from being kind of a academic pundit and then inatak-atak ako, noong una hindi ako sanay kasi parang wait lang. I'm doing these interviews, I'm going on TV and all, to share the message, information, and, to some degree, yeah, medyo pwede ka magpa-cute and that's it, right? So parang, I didn't sign up to this to be hated and, get death threats, etc. So even in my own humble capacity, napansin ko, mahirap mag-transition. Now, in my case, I came in with political conviction. Naniwala po tayo doon sa mga ginagawa natin. Naniwala po tayo sa mga kailangan natin gawin sa West Philippine Sea in terms of defending yung ating depensa, yung ating karagatan, yung ating soberenya, yung ating dignidad. Pagdating sa demokrasya, dapat bawal yung patayin ng tao na basta-basta. So, for me, eventually, it was my sense of conviction that carried me through the day. Not to mention a bit of yoga, martial arts, reading, biographies of all sorts of different great people, etc., etc. So, for me, naintindihan ko rin if some people, especially ako, parang late 20s ako nag-start, essentially getting into this business over the past 10 years or so. Yung ibang tao para 20s pa lang, if you see this sudden reversal from people giving you affirmation, saying ang ganda mo, saying ang this, you're this and that, and then suddenly turns that very thing that was giving you a sense of affirmation, belonging, among other things, pag bumaliktad yan, ang sakit yan. Ang sakit yan, diba? So, I understand na, why there was a sense na this has to stop. This has to stop, right? Now, don't worry, papunta tayo sa politics. I'm just telling you, you cannot be a good thinker if you're not a good humanist, if hindi mo naintindihan the human condition, right? That's very important. And if you don't understand psychology, kung naintindihan mo yung psychology, you can also understand how politics operates. Now, going back to this, wait lang, let me just, block ito mga ayan, tumadami na naman yung mga trolls. Tuwan-tuwa talaga sila sa akin, no? Pero, dahil sa kanila, lumaki engagement natin. But going back to this, hindi actually, that's not true. Na pang troll ko lang yan. Lumalaki engagement natin pag pumapatol tayo. Actually, that's how the algorithm works. Pag pumatol ka, tapos marami nag-away dun sa mga trolls na low life or walang iya, that's where actually nagsisirculate yung pinupost mo. But it's not the trolls per se, themselves. Anyway, the other thing I want to say also here is this. Obviously, cheating under any circumstances, right? Cheating under any circumstances is wrong, it's bad, of course, there are a lot of temptations in this world. Of course, yung iba nasa rebound mode, yung iba sawang-sawa na sa relasyon para ayaw umalis. I get it. It's the human condition. But cheating is not right. Cheating is not good. Now, having said that, okay, now transition na tayo sa totoong usapan natin, no? Now, let's talk about this. Having said that, may karapatan din itong mga tao na to, right? May karapatan din itong mga tao na to. And I think it should have been clear to anyone that sharing those private messages and all to the public was a violation of the privacy rights of these people, right? And let's be clear, hindi kasal itong mga tao na to, so this is not an adultery case na illegal, right? It was quote-unquote immoral, right? But it was not illegal. What was illegal is sharing that private information, right? Kaya nga sabi ni Maris, diba, na she feels, diba, when she goes into public, she feels exposed, diba? So, that's a violation of privacy. Criminal po yan. Criminal po yan. Kaya I was not surprised na marami sa ating mga kaibigan sa legal community, sa legal advocacy community para sa kanila, she should have filed the case. She should have filed the case. Now, obviously, I understand if she were to file a case, she would look more guilty, there would be backlash, etc. But we shouldn't normalize this kind of behavior. Obviously, naintindihan ko yung mga parties who are hurt. But look at Rico Blanco. Kaya sabi ko, Rico Blanco yung sakalam eh. Di ba, move on na siya, wala akong pake. Buti nga, umalis na ako. And I wish you the best, brother. Right? I'm sure mag-affirm ka na lang. Ayan na naman tayo. I mean, like, if you're an artistic type, ganun, I'm sure marami siya mahanap na afam na ma-appreciate siya for what he really brings into this world, no? Yun na lang masasabi natin. Ang AFAM, di ba, applicable sa babae rin, di ba? Hindi naman AFAM na, di ba, gender neutral naman AFAM. Ilang advice ko dun sa mga iba, pag mga ganyan, mag-AFAM na kayo, para move on na kayo. Magbali ka na lang, tapos pabalik-balik ka na. Move on ka na, bro. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I mean, naka-move on naman siya, but I'm just saying, di ba? Kaya ang taas ng respect ko kay Rico Blanco, di ba? The dignity that he has held through and through, and hindi siya pumatol and all of that. Now, I don't want to go into details of timing, sequencing, whatever. Things are messy. Breakups are messy. The recovery is messy. Rebound and all of those crazy stuff is messy. Showbiz is messy. Naintindihan ko lahat na yan. Now, having said that, let me tell you what. I would not have had to spend the past 15 minutes talking about this issue if I didn't feel na it is also getting the attention of people excessively. In fact, isa sa napansin ko, and this is where we're going to proper analysis, isa pa sa napansin ko is, yung mga accounts na sobrang gine-juice out itong issue na to, halos every hour so may makita kang bagong post. Halos every day may makita ko na may back and forth, inaaway pa itong mga artista na to, mga ganon. Nagko-comment sa, siniscreenshot pa yung comment, ganon. Pansin ko, at least some of the biggest ones there, ito rin yung mga account, hindi na natin kailangan pangalanan, pero ito rin yung mga account na nag-apologize dun sa mga Shimenat, dun sa mga Piatos, dun sa mga Mary Grace, dun sa lahat ng mga kababalakan na nakita natin, yung isang kaibigan. So, ito yung mga account na isang kaibigan talaga sila ni alam na natin, yung ating minamahal. So actually, a part of me is thinking, is that spontaneous? Now, obviously, unfortunately, sobrang marites talaga yung kultura natin. I mean, it is just so marites. I'll tell you how marites our culture is. I've attended certain meetings, right? And my sense was, I was invited there to give some political analysis and even a philosophical discussion of issue. The next thing you know, halos 80% of discussion is about who knows who at ano yung mga alam nilang chismis. And I was saying, what the heck? I'm sitting down here with some of the wealthiest people in the country, some of the, most sophisticated culturally, supposedly, people in the country, some of the most informed people, at least sophisticated enough in culture enough to realize they have to meet someone like me. And the next thing pag upo mo dyan, ang actually yung pinapakinggan ay hindi yung analysis. Ang pinapakinggan is, kilala ko si ganito, yung asawa niya ganito. Kilala ko si Liza Araneta, ganito. So, and then I just realized that even at the supposed highest echelons of society sa Pilipinas, ganun pa rin. It's a marites culture. Like, what is considered as proper understanding analysis is really based on who knows who. Right? Parang it's an operator culture. Right? So ang idea ng sino magaling mag-analyze ng politika is hindi yung sino magaling mag-isip, sinong naintindihan yung big context, comparative, ganun. Hindi, ang tanong dyan is, sino may kilala kanino? Right? So I realized that we not only do we have a smart shaming culture, we have a toxic marites culture. Now, me being me, partly diplomatic, partly I have to be also politically savvy, if I can put it that way. Yes, sometimes nakikijoin lang ako, but only to a certain degree as a hook, and then I transition back. But I notice, guys, once pumatol ka sa marites issue, and then you want to transition it back to something more intellectual or intelligent, you lose people's attention immediately. Now, just to be clear, hindi ko sinasabi na unique to sa Pilipinas. I mean, I'm now in India right now. I mean, we can talk about Bollywood culture here. I've met people from all around the world. Yes, don't worry. Di ko na babalikan yung Abuja, Nigeria. No mouth to mouth, man. Like, yung Nigerian na... No, okay. Hindi ko nakakwento yan. May nagsabi na pwede ka na maging uncle. Alam mo yung uncle na every year, pag minute mo, paras lang yung kwento na sasabihin. mga ako siya, no, 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 this time is a different story. This different version does. The same story lang sasabihin niya every year. So whether ito yung interview natin sa Cool Pals sa isang araw, yung sa Safe House natin, Bildor de Vera, I had to raise that issue of Nigeria. Yung the one na pinakita ko kay Sir Ronald, tuwan-tuwa siya. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have no illusions na marami mga ibang kultura na third world country na sobrang marites din. Yes, even mga first world countries. Yeah, mga kano kong kaibigan, mga Europeo kong kaibigan, marami marites sa kanila. Yes. Pero there's a level of marites na understandable, right? Again, going back to evolutionary biology, actually marites works as a form of social cohesion. Kasi the more you share information, right? The more you share, sometimes even intimate information, it's a way of you building bond, right? So it's part of community building. Even the chimpanzees and baboons and all, they have some version of that. No, na they share something. It's their way of creating bond, and at the same time, is creating trust, and at the same time, it's also a form of social regulation. So marites can actually be used for social exclusion and social inclusion. All right. Sorry if I'm doing this evolutionary biology and sociology, but we have to understand bakit ganito tayo sa Pilipinas, right? So again, I'm not saying na tayo lang may marites. Actually, marites is maristes, maristes. It's completely natural. Every culture has it. I've dealt with, I've been to dozens of nations. But ang point ko is, it's just too much. It's just too much. So sa isang banda, talagang tanggap ko na toxic talaga yung marites culture natin. And honestly, I'll be very honest. I know it's gonna sound politically incorrect, but is it? No, I think it's a reflection of our poor education system and a reflection of our poor leadership. Alam mo, if titignan mo, one of the reasons why sobrang popular si Digong is not because may sense yung sinasabi niya. Is not because magaling siya magsalita. In fact, I think Duterte, pag na-transcribe mo siya yung pinaka-migraine ka. Literal dami ng migraine. Pag na-transcribe mo yung song, i-analyze mo. So from a substantive point of view, Duterte had the most nonsensical speeches. But at the same time, ang galing ng emotional impact ng kay Digong kasi hinahalo niya ng marites yung istorya, 'di ba? Istorya, 'di ba? So, napansin ko, our most popular politicians weaponize marites as a form of creating bond, right? As a form of building on their charisma, as a form of hooking in people. I remember very well nung nanalong unit team. Fresh pang unit team to hindi pa sila nag-aaway. And then in-interview tayo sa Bloomberg TV International, so andyan lang somewhere, Makati, I went there. And nagkausap ko yung mga waiters doon, diba? Tapos sabi ko, kamusta ganun? Okay naman, happy naman, nanalo si Sara, nanalo si BBM, pero mamimiss ko si Tatay Digong kasi si BBM parang boring, masyadong statesman-like. I think ito yung ang basihan din nila, yung speech nila sa inauguration. Namiss ko si Tatay Digong Si Tatay Digong parang nagkakamot pa, ganun, tapos nag-usap. So, isang bagay rin talaga is how our leaders have weaponized marites as a form of building political capital. And kita natin yan. And unfortunately, the most popular politicians all tend to be also more marites. But of course, may feedback loop yan, di ba? It goes both ways. At the same time, kung titingnan mo yung educational system natin, to be honest guys, hindi na-reinforce yung pagmamahal sa usapin na may ayoko sabihin na abstract discussion or even critical thinking. Parang yung life of the mind or yung love of ideas or love of discussion of ideas, diba? I mean, if you're in mathematics, then love of formula. There's just something about our education system and popular culture that does not nurture that. Right? I'll tell you what, just like anyone else, I get pleasure from basic things like great food, great fashion, great style. But I'll tell you what, some of the most amazing moments in my life were when I was reading, most of the time it's a Russian book, right? So whether it's the Dostoevsky one, whether it's a Tolstoy one, I mean, and you'll have this aha moment, right? Aha moment. Suddenly, everything inside your brain connects. Suddenly, everything makes sense. Suddenly, all your questions about life and existence just go away, right? Suddenly, something clicks. For me, that's like those have been among my greatest moments of my life. Or when, kunyari, may event, and you're giving a talk and speech, and in the middle of that speech you arrive at a certain idea, and then that idea suddenly illuminates everything, diba? Or you have a debate and discussion. You get what I'm saying? And obviously that didn't come easy to me. It took a lot of training, etc., to get through boring stuff, to get through the whole grind of reading whatever. But I'm telling you guys, there are many cultures, I'm not going to name which countries, but there are many cultures I've been to whereby the life of the mind is not only appreciated, it's praised, it's prized. Okay, France is one. Okay. I mean, France is definitely one, right? I'll absolutely, if you're an intellectual, they're treated like a superstar. In the Middle East too. Turks, Persians, a lot of people, Jews, for instance, they tremendously appreciate the life of the mind, right? So I can go on and on about it. There are really certain cultures whereby if you're a thinker, philosopher, literary figure, you're treated like a national treasure. I'll tell you. And I just felt we never went along. I mean, you know what's the best example of that? And actually, medyo guilty ako dito eh. Nung nabasa ko ulit yung libro ni Rizal nung pandemic time, na hindi base sa requirements sa school, hindi base sa requirement, pero binasa ko yung magandang Penguin edition na latest translation. Actually, nag-guilty ako. I was like, oh my God, bakit hindi ko to binasa ng mas maaga? Like, ang galing pala ni Rizal. Like, sobrang, ang talino. I mean, how can he manage, lalo yung El Filibusterismo eh. Kasi, we can have a conversation about yung Noli and how it overlaps with a certain, plot of another Spanish. Okay, but El Filibusterismo is brilliant. And it's like, wow. And then, but how many Filipinos do you know? In your own family, ilan bang kilala mo na binasa ng gusto yung Rizal outside the requirements of the school? Yung binasa talaga on his own terms, and yung tamang translation, yung magandang translation, yung latest translation, na willing to shell out 500 pesos, 800 pesos for the best edition of that. So actually, I felt guilty about it. And I said like, oh my God. So, sabi nga ni Ambeth Ocampo, yung kaibigan ko di ba? Rizal, the tragedy is that Rizal wrote for a country that doesn't read him. Like, kaya sobrang emotional sa akin yung nasa Madrid tayo last year when when Rizal's book was put there dun sa archive ng canons of Spanish literature dun sa Instituto Cervantes. Can you imagine? Like, Rizal's work ay tinabi doon sa mga greatest Spanish language writers of all time, starting with Cervantes. And yet, how many of us have read him? And how many of us have read him in original Espanol? Right? So if you read the reviews of Benedict Anderson, among others, who like what, for heaven's sake, 10 languages, they can speak 10 languages. When he translated it himself, right? And when he read it himself in Spanish, sabi na sobrang witty at nakakatawa si Rizal. Na hindi mo makapture sa Tagalog, hindi mo rin makapture sa English. Right? Now, you go to other cultures, my goodness, if you're Balzac, oh well, wala na sila. But if you're the modern versions of Balzac and the Tolstoy, whatever, you're treated like a national hero. Absolutely, absolutely. You're feted by the elite. The masses love you. So, malalim talagang ugat ng problema natin yan. And the more we have this Marites culture, the less we'll have appreciation of not only what we have achieved through the greats of our history, from Rizal to Nick Joaquin to Sienel Jose and so on, but we're gonna miss also the next phase of that. Actually, si Resil Mijares, yung gusto kong basahin, yung mga of his latest work, yung nagsulat ng Braids of the Nation, but they have some latest book na gusto kong balikan. So, again, I have nothing against Marites, but it's when it just crowds out everything else that when like, my God, there's really something wrong with us. And that's where also I feel yun ang problema natin sa politika. Kasi kung ikaw ang gusto mag-distract ng tao, right? If you want to prevent the voters from being their most mature version, if you want to prevent the voters from asking for accountability, kung gusto mo yung mga voters ay hindi mag-focus dun sa mga mahalagang issue, if you want to muddy the waters, if you want to push it your way, the best weapon is actually distraction. And the best mode of distraction is Marites, right? I mean, okay, gets ko nung isang araw. Of course, yeah, I mean, artista, ganun, gets ko yan. I mean, these guys are not even the most, no offense, right? I mean, hindi naman ito mga level ni, ano, diba? But, whatever. It's not, but, I mean, ilang araw na, yan, purong yan lang, halos 99% ang ano, is all about that, right? And I can also get to know it because if I post something about it, immediately yung laki ng response. Diba? And then, look at it with Kaloy also, right? Mas pinag-usapan pa yung love life niya at yung mga controversy sa pamilya niya kaysa pinag-usapan ano ba talagang ginawa niya para maging double gold medalist. Ano yung training niya sa Japan? Anong pwede niyang gawin? Anong pwedeng gawin ng mga kapatid niya para maging double gold medalist? You know what I'm saying? Tuloy-tuloy na eh. So, actually, ang isa sa concern ko dyan, guys, is dyan is, ang dali weaponize yung Marites for distraction. And to be honest, mukhang na-weaponize talaga siya. You know, hindi ko kailangan pangalan. Alam niyo na ano yung mga sites na ito na DDS apologies. And then halos 24/7 ang pinupost ang ukol sa issue na ito. And it works because these people have millions of followers. My goodness, grabe yung engagement. As in, million likes, comments, just one post. Right? Tapos nagpapatula, back and forth, ganyan. So, wow. Yeah, Marites is essentially junk food. It's drugs. It's essentially drugs. It's essentially, you know what I'm saying, right? Now, speaking of Jose Rizal had his own version of Marites. I mean, you could read Brains of the Nation and Rizal with Marites, my kababayan, no? My ultimate idol, di ba? Isabelo de los Reyes, you know, and he'll make shades at him, he'll throw shades at him, serving tea. Yeah, tawa lang sila. And yung mga characters ng Rizal, di ba? You know, Doña Victorina, di ba? Consolacion, yung mga ganon. Yes, yung mga so it's not like, you know, we went from, you know, heaven, paradise to something else. But unfortunately, hindi na tayo next level. And that's really frustrating to me. Now, again, naintindihan ko naman, how should I put it? Naintindihan ko na yung sinasabi ng ibang tao. And again, going back to the compassion, di ba? Sabi ko, compassion is very important. So I always blame our politicians and leaders first. But pagdating sa ating mga kababayan, I understand the argument that ang hirap ng buhay sa Pilipinas. Sa totoo lang. Mahirap talagang buhay sa Pilipinas. I mean, just my generation, 30s na kami, medyo matanda na kami. I'm looking around and seeing a lot of people in my age cohort still are not there yet, right? In terms of building their families and all of that. Some of us postponed for the foreseeable future even ideas of building family because it's just so expensive. Ang mahal ang bahay, ang mahal ang, you know, just apartments in Manila are tens of millions of pesos if you want to have a decent place and 2-3 bedroom. You know, everything's expensive. Milk, gatas, everything. And then dun sa mga Gen Zs, next generation, kamusta naman yung kanilang, you know, security of tenure, yung career trajectory, and then may AI. Naintindihan ko, mahirap talagang buhay. Mahirap talagang buhay ngayon. Naintindihan ko talaga. Mahal. Everything is expensive. Kanina lang, bigla may text sa akin sa someone like that, oh, yung ganito, ganyan, tataas ko yung... And I understand the temptation when things are so hard, you just go for junk food, right? Whether physical junk food or mental junk food, which is memes. Naintindihan ko yan. You need stress release. But I'll tell you what, kahapon on the way, kasi may connecting flights, I went Bangkok and then I went back to a beautiful book by Perry Anderson, ito yung brother, and it's about history of, you know, political thinkers in the poorest countries in the world who helped to mobilize people for labor unions, etc. So whether it's Rosa Luxemburg, whether it's Luxembourg or whether it's Antonio Gramsci, whether it's Lukács, I mean, a lot of these people, very poor countries. I mean, we're talking about Hungary, Russia, Poland, Sardinia, Italia, 100 years ago when their per capita incomes were half of what is the average income in the Philippines nowadays. I'm talking about inflation adjusted. And yet, a lot of these people, ang target audience nila, dun sa kanilang mga thinking, Analysis nila ng capitalist system, analysis nila ng motions of capital accumulation, analysis nila ng Marx Das Kapital, analysis nila ng mobilization, analysis nila ng class oppression and class conflict and historical materialism. Ang target audience po nila is mga magsasaka. Whether it's whether it's or whether it's the laborers in Turin, in factories, or whether it's the workers, the villagers in Sardinia, right? Or whether it's some extremely poor farmers in inner Russia. So at the same time, I'm thinking about it. It's not like poverty, extreme poverty even, stop a lot of people on earth from being open to critical thinking, education, and even class conflict and historical materialism and all of this. Now, mahabang usapan na, I can suggest that book, baka maretag na ako. But, minsan parang napapano isip din ako na we have a lot of history, we have a long history of very poor societies still putting a lot of time. Workers, laborers, farmers putting time going to academies, where political parties where they get orientation, socialization, free lectures and analysis by political thinkers. Yung mga ganon, diba? Again, from Rosa Luxemburg to Antonio Gramsci to Lukács and all of these people. So, I don't know. Obviously, talagang malalim ang problema ito. Malalim na problema ito. Now, speaking of malalim na problema, well, we have a development here. So mukhang the impeachment momentum is still there, despite two things, right? One, BBM coming out and pouring a cold water on it. Yes, we can talk about whether Machiavellian move to, whether ano yan. Okay, whatever. And then, second and most importantly, pinag-usapan natin kahapon yan, at least one major religious group has nagparamdam na they're willing to go all out and conduct massive protest or peace protest, whatever, if ever tuloy-tuloy itong impeachment yan. But that did not seem or has not seemed to have dented itong momentum ng impeachment. In fact, we're hoping to join again, hindi lang si Secretary Liamas, ating resident Madam Auring analyst, but we're hoping to also join Congressman Percy, who sponsored the first major impeachment complaint against Sara soon, para makita din natin, makuha rin natin yung side nila. So don't worry, we're gonna also interview them. But going back to this, guys, while we're on this, actually, there's a third impeachment complaint na ma-file against Sara Duterte. And if you were to listen even to, I think this is Salvador Panelo himself, right? Even Salvador Panelo ay umamin na malaking chance na na papasa ito sa Kamara ng baka medyo mabilis-bilis din. Kasi actually, initially, I was also wondering, baka Kamara pa lang, hindi na nila papasa yan because tingin nila malabo din sa Senate and etc. But it looks like, especially that itong third impeachment might reflect more accurately and directly, no? Yung sentimiento ng leadership ng Kamara, right? So just to go to this, a third impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte is already being contemplated by some congressmen, according to House Secretary General Reginald Velasco. Hindi siya nagbibigay ng maraming details dito or information, pero ito po yung sinabi ni Secgen Velasco. May mga congressman na kumausap sa akin na mayroon daw silang pinag-iisipan i-file or i-endorse. Kaya on hold kami dito, naghihintay kami, malalaman natin next week kung itutuloy nila yung complaint na i-file nila. We were just informed na standby lang, baka mag-file kami ng another complaint, so we respect their decision. I cannot reveal kasi meron kaming agreement na it will remain confidential until they actually endorse or file the complaint. So, interestingly, that looks like neither the leaked private advice of BBM nor this semi-warning by this major religious group has completely dented or undermined etong momentum for impeachment. In fact, si Congresswoman Luistro, also the other day mentioned that she's cautiously optimistic na papasa talaga ito sa Kamara and most likely before the election proper. I mean, let's listen to actually Congressman Luis Tro, no? Nasa ano rin siya eh, parang katulad namin ni Ronald Llamas. Kasama pala ni Ronald Llamas kanina. Wait. Sa StoryCon pala to, sorry. Sorry na. Sorry na. Ito pakinggan natin si Congressman Luis Tro lang. And then I want to go to the Senate and have some discussion in the Senate, guys.
Yan po. Of course, we understand that there are things that you probably would not be too free to talk about, but we'll try to push the envelope kahit paano. There's a lot of discussion about
Parang style ko yan, ha? Si
whether
Edwin.
or not the president should be taken literally when he says no impeachment at this point. I'm wondering if that was discussed.
Bakit
That was also a topic last night in Malacanang with, of course, the congressional leadership. Because, of course, ma'am, dalawa na ipapile na complaint. You're aware of that. So everybody's watching and waiting. Ano po ang nakuha ang signal ng Kongreso sa Malacanang?
Actually, what was the
Sige lang.
president's pronouncement to the media, to the public about no impeachment? Wala din namang nabanggit kagabi, no? As a matter of fact, politically, hindi significant yung naging what you call fellowship, except that we presented the resolution manifesting our support to the leadership of His Excellency President Bongbong
Yun,
Marcos.
buya ka siya.
As a matter of fact, I do not intend to disclose really what happened last night kasi it's not political. It is just the usual visit to the President.
Yun, no?
And in time for Christmas,
Of course.
bumati po tayo, and some of us rendered a Christmas song, and then we presented the resolution that we are manifesting our support. No discussion at all about the impeachment. As a matter of fact, most of us were anticipating really that somehow the president will make some pronouncement or guidance perhaps as to the two impeachment complaints which are pending already in the House of Representatives. But apparently wala eh. Walang discussion at all.
Yun, no?
So,
Parang showbiz din pala.
So,
Yes,
walang
yes,
walang
boss.
nautos sa Fellowship of the Ring na lumusob kay Sauron.
wala pong discussion at all about the impeachment, no? So, with his silence last night, I think he is standing with his prior pronouncement
Yun,
that he does not support impeachment because it does not help even a single Filipino. That's my understanding.
Of
Sir
course.
Ronald.
Congresswoman,
Of
meron
course.
naman mga speculation. Bakit daw kinakailangan na mag-issue ng resolution of support sa
Alam
Presidente
mo, Ma'am
ang
Abby,
Congress?
Yeah, we always do that from time to time, no? It's not only because there are challenges concerning the issues on impeachment, pero ako first termer kasi ako eh. But since I came in Congress, it has been the practice of the majority na i-renew, i-rekindle, i-remanifest yung aming suporta to the leadership of the President. So, I don't see anything unusual or special about the manifestation of support that happened last night. It is the same manifestation of support that we've been doing
Parang
since
mahirap
we took
pag-interview
office
kan si Ma'am
back
Luis
in
Tro. Medyo ikutan.
July of 2022.
Okay, ma'am. Sige, ma'am, that's fair. Sige, if
Diba?
there was no discussion at all, there was no mention at all last night by the President of impeachment, well, let me put it this way na lang. What about you po with your colleagues outside of any discussion with Malacanang? Kamusta po ang pag-uusap ninyo ng inyong mga kasamahan sa Kongreso as far as the possibility of impeachment is concerned, especially in light of the President's earlier pronouncement na huwag niyong pagtutunan ng pansin yan. Pabayaran ninyo.
Let us be reminded about the principle of separation of power.
Yun, na hindi tayo masabihan.
We understand and we do recognize the prerogative of the President to maintain his position na ayaw niya ng impeachment. It distracts the Philippine nation. It does not help even a single Filipino here in our country, no? Kaya lang, we have to acknowledge the fact na kung may trabaho ang ehekutibo, mayroon din pong trabaho ang Kongreso. In the same way na may trabaho din ang judiciary. Ito pong pag-take up ng, at the very least, 2 impeachment complaint which are already pending before us. It's a constitutional duty on the part of the Congress. Wala po yung option na hindi i-take up eh.
Yun.
The only option is to take up. And then when we take up, we can either approve or disapprove. That's my understanding.
So,
no? So,
essentially,
at least na,
you know, they're-
ganito rin po.
So essentially, they're saying BBM will be ano. Okay, sige. So I'm sure BBM will be happy to pag pinanood niya yung interview niya. Now, I think nevertheless, if you watch the full interview, Congressman Luis Tro has intimated that the idea of this passing through the Congress is not impossible. If anything, quite likely yan. And hopefully tomorrow, try natin balikan si Ronald para usapan yan. But for me talaga, it goes down to the Senate. This really goes down to the Senate. And I think that's really where things get interesting. Now, over the past 24 hours, I've had some exchanges with Senator J.V. Ejercito on this issue. Because I think Senator Ejercito felt that there was a misunderstanding of his take. There was a lot of pushback against what he said. So ako naman, in all spirit of fairness, I tried to reflect what he said. So basahin lang natin, first of all, yung kay na obviously hindi yung private messages, information, in terms of his public posting, I think it's probably the framing yung kanyang tweet didn't come off well. But as I've been very honest, I think the problem kasi is may impression na talaga sa Senate na masyado silang pa-save, na they're not holding certain people to account, na they're allowing some of the more, let's just be honest, some of the more, alam mo, to dominate the headlines, etc. So, just to be clear, kasi ito yung unang pinost ni Senator JV, and then I'll go to two more senators, Senator Zubiri, and then Senate President Chizo Escudero. Ito yung sinabi ni Ejercito, and dami nag-react dito. He said, I ran as an independent, wala akong utang na loob, lalo na sa Unity. In fact, I was booted out of the lineup when they joined forces. My debt of gratitude belongs to the Filipino people and no one else. I'm just sad with all the bickerings happening that is affecting the economy, the investors' confidence, and the major issues that need our immediate attention. Dito, I think medyo na-trigger ang mga tao. Personally, I was also triggered because if we're referring to the assassination threats and all of this destabilizing behavior from one camp, I think that's definitely not bickering. Sabi ni Senator, been pushing and focusing on massive infra development, healthcare, housing, AFP modernization. All of this will be severely affected kung tuloy-tuloy itong away na to. That is my point. If indeed impeachment pushes through, but I think this is an important part in fairness to the senator. If impeachment indeed pushes through, hopefully it doesn't take long so we can go back to work and focus on our problems. All the more I am not in favor of a coup as it will cause political instability in the long run. We need to focus and get down to business as we need a lot of catching up to do. Now, obviously my response, I zeroed in on the point of trigger and medyo sabi ko, the point of, wala na sabaw na. No, I focused on the point of bickering, and I felt like that's too dismissive to describe ano nangyari ngayon. But in fairness naman, si Senator nag-reply kaagad, nag-message din sa akin to clarify his point. Ako naman, for me honestly, siguro the way it came off was kind of wrong dahil it initially appeared to me it was dismissive, and then essentially saying let's move on na lang tayo, which I felt is not really the right way forward. Kasi kung may mali talaga nangyari, we have to do what is right, regardless, di ba? And as I said, kung hindi mo ayusin yan, lalala itong situation na yan. Now, in fairness to the senator, he said, Prof, I just took the cue from the president. I think I was misunderstood. Didn't say that impeachment will not be good at this time and that there are far more important things to do and need for our attention. In fairness, the president has remained calm. It's the other persons and groups that are bickering. Okay, again, nevertheless, I made an issue with that and then may ibang clarification. But for me, I think this is a common sentiment we keep on hearing from certain quarters, and I think slightly more problematic yung sinabi ni isa pang senador dito. So because if you go to Senator Zubiri, okay, for me kasi at least in fairness kay Senator Ejercito, ang sinabi niya, if magkaroon ng impeachment sana, syempre hindi siya pwede mag-statement on the impeachment kasi that will be prejudicial if ever magkaroon ng trial. Gets? But I think at least the important part is that sana hindi ito mag-drag on forever because it will have snowball effect in the wrong way. Gets ko naman yan. I'm just saying na siguro it just came off wrong dahil parang ang dating is wag na natin pag-usapan, move on na tayo. Diba? Now, Senator Zubiri had a little bit of different approach. Ito yung stance niya.
Pwede relax
Ay.
para hanap.
Okay, wait. Bakit? Indian YouTube ang wait lang.
Zubiri admits not being keen. Zubiri said the Senate does
Do not talk about the impeachment, but in my heart, is this what we want so close to the elections?
Zubiri's pronouncement comes after
Wait,
two
wait,
impeachment complaints were filed against Vice President
Saan
Sara
yung full
Duterte.
statement niya eh?
First impeachment-
Sorry, I want to bring out the full statement. Ito yata yan.
Yeah.
Ito.
Time for it going 2 weeks na lang po. 3 to 5.
Ako, like many of my colleagues, we would not want to see an impeachment proceedings in the Senate because obviously it's going to be